The Enterobacteriaceae is a broad group representing a number of different genera of really important gram-negative rod-shaped bacterium. You may see some familiar faces in here that you've heard about before: E. coli, Klebsiella, Salmonella, Yersinia. These are all genetically related, which is why they belong to the same family, but they are, again, medically important gram-negative rods that are found worldwide in the soil, water, and of course as part of our normal microbiome, especially of the intestines. Some of these species are always associated with disease, and some of them are opportunistic infections, whereas they'll only cause infection if they get where they're not supposed to be, or if a patient is immune compromised. In general, the Enterobacteriaceae are of moderate size, so they're not extremely long rods, but they're also not like a Coccobacillus type size, and they are non-spore forming. They have a common antigen, the enterobacterial common antigen. Again, they are genetically related. They belong to the same family. They are rapid growing, and they are facultative anaerobes, which helps them to live in the intestines, but also in the environment. They have relatively simple nutritional requirements. These are going to be really easy to grow in the lab on any sort of common growth media. And they are oxidase negative, which helps to separate them biochemically from other gram-negative rods. So things like Pseudomonas might be oxidase positive, and these are going to be oxidase negative. Different genera can be separated by their fermentation of lactose, their resistance to bile salts, or the presence of a capsule. So, for example, these will all grow on EMB or MacConkey agar, but some of them ferment lactose, so they'll be one color. Some of them don't ferment lactose, so they'd be a different color. And then on EMB, E. coli is my favorite. It turns that metallic green. The LPS, of course, is going to be a major cell wall antigen, and we can classify them serologically based on H antigens, which would be the flagellum, O antigen, which is going to be part of the LPS, and then the capsule, which is sometimes called the K antigen. And you may have heard of something like E. coli O157H7. That's what we mean by the classification. So we can give each strain its own designation. The majority of the Enterobacteriaceae are motile, and they have peritricious flagellum, meaning they have flagellum all over the surface of the cell. Many of them have pili to allow them to adhere, or fimbriae, and they can also engage in conjugation. So they can especially move things like plasmids containing antibiotic resistance from one cell to another. Some of the common virulence factors that these bacteria have include the endotoxin, which I already mentioned, capsule. They can have antigenic phase variation, which helps them hide from the immune system. They can have type 3 secretion systems, which allow them to inject proteins into other cells. They can sequester growth factors from the host. They can be resistant to complement. And of course, they can have high levels of antimicrobial resistance. So what I'm showing you here is a cartoon of what the type 3 secretion system looks like, where you have, this is the gram-negative bacterial cell, so you have the outer membrane and the inner membrane, and it looks like a little needle that you can, or you as the bacterium, can use to inject proteins into the host cell. The majority of infections with E. coli are endogenous. So that means you get the infection from your own microbiome. And when we're talking about things like urinary tract infections, we're generally talking about bacteria from the intestines, so fecal bacteria, getting into the urinary tract. So this could be as a result of improper hygiene, It could be, following an illness. It could be following catheterization and hospitalization. But that's generally what we see, is that the majority of infections that are E. coli infections are caused by a person making themselves sick. There are a few different manifestations of E. coli infection. They're all listed here. I think it'll be important for you to be able to differentiate some of these major types. Not every detail about all of them, but some of the details. So these three affect the small intestine. So you have E-tech, or enterotoxigenic E. coli. This is probably most common, and it's often associated with people who are traveling. So it's called traveler's diarrhea. And we see, a lot of cases every year, over 800 million cases every year. It's associated with the consumption of contaminated food and water. And it's because patients have a couple of different toxins that can be produced in the body by the bacterium, including a heat-stable and a heat-labile enterotoxin. And those generally lead to hypersecretion of fluids, which of course causes diarrhea. Most US outbreaks are caused by strains that are producing the heat-stable toxin. E-pec, enteropathogenic E. coli, is not as common in the US. You see something like infant diarrhea in developing countries. This one has really interesting pathology. It disrupts the normal structure of the microvilli in the intestines. And remember, in the intestines, the microvilli are super important to provide a lot of surface area for fluid absorption. And when they are altered by these bacteria, you have altered absorption of water, which again can lead to the diarrhea. You also have enteroaggregative E. coli that can, again, modify the structure of the microvilli. This one can also lead to infiltration of monocytes and hemorrhage. So you could see bloody diarrhea with these patients. The two, I don't want to call them strains, but okay, we'll call them strains, that are associated with infection in the lower intestine are S-tech, Shiga toxin producing E. coli, and enteroinvasive E. coli. So the Shiga toxin producing E. coli used to be called enterohemorrhagic E. coli because, again, you have patients who will have grossly bloody diarrhea. This is that E. coli O157H7 that's super commonly associated with foodborne disease, belongs to this group of E. coli. So there are two toxins, two Shiga toxins, which is why it's called Shiga toxin producing E. coli, that disrupt protein synthesis and lead to cell death. So you are getting some diarrhea because of malabsorption, but it's actually because of destruction of the microvilli, not because of changing the shape of them, and not because of hypersecretion of fluid. So here you're getting destruction of the microvilli, which prevents absorption, which also causes blood. The enteroinvasive E. coli is pretty rare. It's really closely related to Shigella, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And again, diarrhea, everything is going to cause diarrhea with E. coli. One of the other dangerous things about these Shiga toxin producing E. coli is that the disease can be caused by ingestion of fewer than 100 organisms. So again, that is not a lot of bacteria to make you very, very sick. I told you diarrhea is super common as a manifestation of E. coli infection, but so is urinary tract infection. These usually originate in the host colon, and the bacteria contaminate the urethra. When you think about anatomy, male and female anatomy, in your reflection, I want you to think about, do you think urinary tract infections like this are more common in males or in females, again, based on anatomy, and why. So that's really important, again, for you as a clinician to think about. The strains that are most capable of causing urinary tract infections generally have adhesins, which helps them to stick to the urinary tract, even though the flushing action of urination should wash them out. And they also have hemolysins. E. coli can cause meningitis, most frequently only in neonates. Usually, anyone older than that has a healthy enough immune system to protect themselves from that. It's not known yet how or why the bacteria will cross the blood-brain barrier, just that they can. And then some patients who have untreated GI infections or urinary tract infections can develop septicemia, so the bacteria can get into the blood. That is not a terribly common manifestation of disease, but it can happen.